The first thing I remember after waking from surgery was not the pain shooting through my spine like lightning. It wasn't the sterile hospital smell or the mechanical beep of monitors. It was Layla's face, hovering above mine, her lips curled into what most would perceive as concern. But her eyes were cold, distant galaxies. In that moment, drugged and disoriented as I was, I saw the truth I'd been avoiding for months. My name is Adrian Keller. I'm 38 years old and I built a successful tech security firm from nothing. I've spent my life solving problems, identifying weaknesses, and securing vulnerabilities. Ironic, then, that I failed to secure the most important system in my life, my marriage. "You're awake," Layla said, her voice carrying the practiced warmth of a hostess greeting unwanted guests. "The doctor says the surgery went well." I tried to speak, but my throat was sandpaper. She didn't offer water. Instead, she checked her watch, that $5,000 Cartier I'd given her for our 10th anniversary. "I need to make some calls about your care arrangements," she said, already turning away. "Rest now." That was the beginning of my awakening, in more ways than one. 3 days later, I was discharged from the hospital with a titanium-reinforced spine, a wheelchair, and a wife who couldn't disguise her resentment. The car accident had shattered 3 vertebrae and damaged my spinal cord. Recovery would take months, possibly a year. Complete recovery wasn't guaranteed. Our home, a modern 3-story overlooking Lake Washington that I'd designed myself, was now a prison of sorts. Stairs became mountains, bathrooms became obstacle courses, and Layla became my reluctant warden. "I've hired a part-time nurse," she announced on our first night home. "She'll come 3 times a week. I have obligations, Adrian." "What obligations?" I asked, genuinely curious. Layla hadn't worked since we married 12 years ago. Her career as an interior designer had consisted of 2 projects for friends, both of which I'd silently funded. "People depend on me," she snapped, arranging my medication on the nightstand with unnecessary force. "The world doesn't stop because you had an accident." I nodded, swallowing the retort that formed in my throat. Something was wrong. Something beyond normal caregiver stress. I'd seen that look before, about 6 months ago, when I'd returned early from a business trip to San Francisco. I'd found her frantically cleaning the house, changing sheets, opening windows. At the time, I convinced myself it was nothing. Now I wasn't so sure. That night, alone in our guest bedroom, Layla had decided our king bed wouldn't be good for my recovery. I opened my laptop and remotely accessed my home security system. Most people don't know that I started my company after a home invasion in my 20s. That traumatic experience left me with a pathological need for security measures, cameras hidden in smoke detectors, motion sensors disguised as thermostats, GPS trackers in all our vehicles. Layla knew about the exterior cameras and some interior ones in common areas. What she didn't know was that after that strange day 6 months ago, I'd expanded the system. I hesitated, cursor hovering over the folder labeled House Interior, Private. Was I really going to do this? Invade my wife's privacy on a hunch? But then I remembered her eyes in the hospital, cold as river stones. I clicked. The footage from the previous few days revealed little at first. Layla moving through rooms, making calls in hushed tones that the audio couldn't quite capture. But patterns emerged. She spent unusual amounts of time preparing herself, styling her hair, applying makeup, selecting outfits, only to claim she was running errands or meeting the girls for lunch. I switched to the GPS data from her Mercedes. Contrary to her claims about visiting Whole Foods or her friend Melissa, her car had been parked at the Four Seasons Hotel downtown multiple times in the past week. For hours. My chest tightened. I wasn't surprised exactly. More confirmed. Like receiving test results for an illness you already suspected you had. I kept digging. There were gaps in the house footage, times when the system had apparently malfunctioned. Except I knew my system didn't malfunction. Someone had temporarily disabled it. Someone who knew the code. One night, 4 days after my return home, I got my answer. I pretended to take my pain medication, which typically knocked me unconscious for hours. In reality, I slipped the pills under my tongue and disposed of them later. Then I waited, feigning deep sleep when Layla checked on me. At 11:43 p.m., my phone vibrated. Motion detected in the master bedroom. I pulled up the live feed. Layla stood before the full-length mirror, wearing lingerie I'd never seen, black lace that must have cost hundreds. She wasn't dressing up for a husband who could barely move his legs. Her phone chimed, and she smiled at the screen before typing a response. She moved to the walk-in closet, out of the camera's view. I switched feeds. She was selecting a dress, spraying perfume on her wrists and neck. My favorite scent that I'd told her reminded me of the night we met. My heart hammered against my ribs. I switched back to the bedroom camera just as she answered her phone. "Yes, I'm leaving now," she whispered, glancing toward the door. "He's completely out. Those meds knock him unconscious for at least 8 hours." A pause. "I know," she laughed softly. "He's more use unconscious than awake. I wish he'd just stay that way." Another pause. Her voice dropped even lower, but the high-quality microphones I'd installed caught every venomous word. "No, Raymond, I mean it. You don't know what it's like, having to bathe him, help him to the toilet. It's pathetic. And the doctors say it could be a year before he's back to normal. I can't. I won't live like this." Raymond. The name registered immediately. Raymond Westfield, corporate lawyer at Blackwell & Stone. We'd had dinner with him and his wife Sarah just 2 months ago. He'd seemed overly interested in Layla's charity work I primarily funded. "Yes, I'll be there in 20, Layla continued. "I've got a surprise for you." She ended the call, checked her appearance one final time, and left the room. Moments later, I heard the garage door open and close. I sat in the darkness of the guest room, shaking, not from pain or weakness, but from rage. White-hot, clarifying rage that burned away all uncertainty. I took a deep breath and opened a new folder on my encrypted drive. Project Retribution. For 3 weeks, I lived a double life. During the day, I was the helpless husband, grateful for Layla's increasingly impatient care, apologetic for my condition, heavily medicated and foggy. I made a point of seeming weaker than I actually was, exaggerating my dependence. "I'm sorry to bother you," I'd say, voice deliberately feeble when asking for water. "The physical therapist says I'm making progress, but it's so slow." "Well, these things take time," she'd reply, not meeting my eyes as she roughly handed me the glass. "I've got to run out for a bit. Will you be okay?" "Of course," I'd smile weakly. "Where are you off to?" "Just errands." Nothing important. At night, while she was with Raymond, I worked. I compiled footage, recorded conversations, tracked financial transactions. I discovered she'd been using our joint credit card to pay for hotel rooms and expensive restaurants. There were charges for jewelry and men's clothing items that had never entered our home. I hired a private investigator, an old client who owed me a favor, to follow them and document their affair from angles my system couldn't capture. Public displays of affection, entering and leaving the hotel, having dinner at restaurants where our friends might see them. Then there was the money. Using my company's forensic accounting software, I traced significant withdrawals from our joint account. Over $75,000 in the past 6 months. Money that had funded their rendezvous, weekend getaways disguised as girls' trips, and lavish gifts for her lover. Most devastating were the recorded conversations. Layla and Raymond laughing about my condition, planning their future, discussing how long they should wait after my recovery, or if they should wait at all. "He's so pathetic now," Layla said in one recording, her voice thick with whine and contempt. I look at him and feel nothing but disgust. "You've done your duty," Raymond assured her. "Nobody would blame you for leaving. A man in his condition. It's not what you signed up for." "The money complicates things," she sighed. "If I leave now, I might not get what I deserve in the divorce." What she deserved. The phrase echoed in my head as I built my case, meticulously organizing evidence into categories: infidelity, financial abuse, emotional cruelty. During physical therapy sessions, I pushed myself beyond what my doctors recommended. Each stab of pain fueled my determination. While pretending weakness at home, I was gradually regaining strength. The physical therapist was surprised by my progress. "Your recovery rate is remarkable, Mr. Keller," she said during one session. "Whatever you're doing, keep it up." What I was doing was channeling rage into rehabilitation, transforming betrayal into recovery, building strength for the reckoning to come. By the 4th week, I could stand briefly. By the 5th, I could take a few steps with a walker while home alone. Layla never noticed. She was too preoccupied with her double life, too confident in my helplessness to see that I was methodically planning her downfall. The first phase of my plan launched on a Tuesday. I selected Tuesday because Sarah Westfield volunteered at her children's school on Tuesdays. Raymond would be at work. Their house would be empty when the manila envelope arrived. Inside that envelope was a carefully curated selection of evidence: photos of Raymond and Layla entering the Four Seasons, time-stamped to match days when both had claimed to be elsewhere, screenshots of text messages obtained through my security firm's recovery software, transcripts of conversations where they mocked their spouses, credit card statements showing Raymond's purchases for Layla, highlighting the date of their affair's beginning, 1 month before my accident. I included a brief anonymous note. "Sarah, I believe you deserve to know. Evidence more extensive than shown. Protect yourself and your children." Phase 2 began that same evening. While Layla was having dinner with her sister, who actually lived in Boston and hadn't spoken to Layla in months, I made a call to my attorney, Marcus Devereux. "It's been a while, Adrian," he said. "How's the recovery?" "Complicated," I replied. "I need your absolute discretion on a delicate matter." Marcus had handled my business contracts for over a decade. He was ruthlessly efficient and pathologically discreet. "I'm initiating divorce proceedings," I told him, my voice steady. "And I need something else done first. Something completely legal but creative." By midnight, working with Marcus and my firm's financial team, I had transferred the majority of our marital assets into an irrevocable trust, one that protected those assets while remaining technically accessible to both of us. The structure, however, required dual authorization for withdrawals. Given my condition, Layla would need to demonstrate my competence and consent for any financial decisions, a competence I could strategically withhold. When Layla returned home at 1:30 a.m., I was waiting in the darkness of our living room, seated in my wheelchair. I heard her freeze when she saw my silhouette. "Adrian? Why are you sitting in the dark?" I turned on the lamp beside me. "Couldn't sleep. Pain." She relaxed visibly, assuming I'd caught her coming home late, but nothing more. "You should have called me. I would have come back sooner." "Would you?" I asked mildly. Something in my tone made her pause. "Of course. I was just having dinner with Angela." "Interesting," I nodded. "Especially since Angela called here looking for you around 9. She seemed concerned when I said you were supposedly having dinner with her." Layla's face paled, then flushed. There must have been a misunderstanding." "Must have been," I agreed, turning my chair toward the bedroom. "Would you mind helping me back to bed? I'm quite exhausted." Her hands trembled as she pushed my wheelchair. She was rattled, but still believed she'd weathered the storm. Her relief was palpable when I asked no further questions. Little did she know, the storm hadn't even begun. The next morning, my phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. It contained only 2 words. She knows. Sarah Westfield had opened the envelope. What happened next exceeded even my expectations. Sarah, a former prosecutor before becoming a full-time mother, didn't waste time with hysterics or confrontations. By noon, she had removed her children from school, contacted her former law firm colleagues, and initiated both divorce proceedings and a restraining order against Raymond for emotional abuse. The evidence I'd provided gave her enough legal ammunition to move swiftly and decisively. Raymond was served with papers while in a client meeting. According to my investigator, he left the building ashen-faced, frantically calling Layla. My home security system captured Layla's reaction to his call, the blood draining from her face, the panicked pacing, the hurried packing of an overnight bag. She left without a word to me, claiming an emergency with a friend when the day nurse questioned her departure. For 48 hours, Layla was unreachable. During that time, Marcus executed the remainder of our plan. Forensic accountants documented every misappropriated dollar. The trust structure was finalized. Divorce papers were prepared, citing infidelity, financial abuse, and emotional cruelty with voluminous evidence attached. When Layla finally returned home, she looked like she'd aged years. Her perfect makeup couldn't hide the hollowness in her eyes or the tension in her jaw. "We need to talk," she said, sitting across from me in the living room. Her voice was controlled, rehearsed. "Raymond Westfield's wife has made some disturbing accusations about me, about us. They're completely false, of course, but given your condition, I wanted to protect you from this stress." I regarded her silently, marveling at her capacity for deception even now. "Someone sent her fabricated evidence," she continued, watching my face carefully. "Photos that have been doctored, fake text messages. It's disturbing. Raymond thinks it might be a former client with a grudge." "That's concerning," I said neutrally. "What kind of evidence?" She hesitated. "Nothing worth repeating. Vile accusations. I just want you to know that if you hear anything, it's all lies." I nodded thoughtfully. "I appreciate your honesty, Layla. It's always been what I valued most about you." Relief flickered across her face. "By the way," I added, "I tried to make a transfer from our joint account yesterday. Apparently there's some issue with the bank. Do you know anything about that?" The question caught her off guard. "No. Why would I?" "Just asking." "Oh, and someone delivered this while you were gone." I handed her a sealed legal envelope that had been sitting beside me. "It seems important." Her hands shook as she opened it. I watched her face contort as she read the divorce petition and skimmed the first few pages of evidence. Screenshots of her own text messages, photos of her entering hotel rooms, transcripts of her cruel comments about my condition. "What is this?" she whispered, looking up with genuine shock. "Adrian, I don't understand." I leaned forward in my wheelchair. "Don't you?" "Let me help clarify. He's more use unconscious than awake. I wish he'd just stay that way." "Sound familiar?" The color drained from her face. You heard that?" "I heard everything, Layla. I saw everything. While you thought I was drugged into oblivion, I was building a case. Every hotel visit, every dollar stolen, every lie." "This is insane," she stammered. "You've been spying on me? That's illegal." I smiled thinly. "Not when it's my own security system in my own home. Not when the car you drove to your rendezvous is registered in my name. But you know what is illegal? Fraudulent use of joint funds, theft. And in this state, adultery still impacts divorce settlements when it involves financial misconduct." She stood, papers clutched in her white-knuckled grip. "You can't do this. You need me. You can barely walk." Slowly, deliberately, I rose from the wheelchair. With careful steps, I moved toward her, using only a cane for support. Her eyes widened in disbelief. "You've been lying about your condition," she gasped. "I learned from the best," I replied coldly. You have 48 hours to remove your personal belongings from this house. The court has already issued a temporary order granting me exclusive use of the property during proceedings. Your access to all financial accounts has been suspended pending investigation of misappropriation." "Where am I supposed to go?" she demanded, panic rising in her voice. "That's not my concern. Perhaps Raymond can help you. Oh, wait, he's dealing with his own legal nightmare. And based on my last update, his firm has placed him on administrative leave pending an ethics investigation. Something about client funds and hotel receipts not matching his reported whereabouts." Tears spilled down her cheeks, not of remorse but of fury and fear. "You've ruined me." "No, Layla. You ruined yourself. I simply ensured you faced consequences." The following months unfolded like a carefully orchestrated symphony of justice. Raymond's law firm, facing potential scandal, distanced themselves from him completely. He was terminated with cause after the ethics investigation revealed multiple instances of billing clients for hours spent with Layla. His professional reputation, built over 20 years, collapsed in weeks. Sarah Westfield, leveraging her legal background and the evidence I'd provided, secured a divorce settlement that left Raymond financially crippled. The restraining order prevented him from approaching their children's school or Sarah's residence. His visitation was supervised after evidence emerged of his character, recordings of him mockingly discussing his family obligations while with Layla. Layla herself spiraled downward with stunning speed. With her access to our accounts frozen and the evidence of financial misconduct well documented, she had no resources to fight the divorce. Friends who'd initially supported her withdrew when portions of the evidence became public record through the court proceedings, particularly the callous comments about my injury and disability. She tried staying with various friends, but doors closed one by one as the full story spread through our social circle. Raymond, drowning in his own legal battles, cut contact completely. His final text to her, captured by my monitoring software before her phone was disconnected for non-payment, read simply, "Don't contact me again. You've cost me everything." Eventually, Layla was forced to return to her parents in Arizona, parents who had never approved of her lifestyle and who viewed her behavior as confirmation of their long-held criticisms. According to my investigator's final report, she was working as a retail associate at a department store, living in her childhood bedroom at age 36. The divorce was finalized 6 months after I served her with papers. The judge, reviewing the extensive evidence of infidelity and financial misconduct, awarded me the house, all business assets, and ordered Layla to pay restitution for the misappropriated funds, a judgment she would likely never be able to fulfill, but which would hang over her credit and financial future for decades. 1 year after my accident, I stood on the balcony of my home alone now, watching the sunset over Lake Washington. My recovery had progressed beyond my doctor's most optimistic projections. I still used a cane, and probably always would, but I could walk, swim, and had returned to running my company full-time. The house felt different. Emptier in some ways, but also unburdened. I'd removed all traces of Layla, redecorated, replaced furniture, eliminated spaces where memories lingered. The security system remained, though I'd removed many of the interior cameras. Some wounds heal, some forms of trust don't. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Final garnishment order approved. RW terminated from new position after judgment enforcement." I smiled slightly. Raymond had attempted to rebuild his career at a smaller firm in Portland. That effort had just collapsed under the weight of his past and the continuing financial judgments against him. Was it petty to keep track of their downfalls? Perhaps. But in the quiet moments when phantom pain shot through my spine, when I remembered Layla's words, "He's more use unconscious than awake," I felt no remorse for the meticulous destruction I'd engineered. Some would call it revenge. I preferred to think of it as architectural justice, designing a consequence that perfectly mirrored the offense. They had conspired to benefit from my weakness, mocked my dependence, planned to profit from my vulnerability. Now they experience the same: social isolation, financial precarity, professional ruin. I took a sip of whiskey and watched as the last light faded from the sky. In the security business, we have a saying: every system has vulnerabilities. The key is finding them before someone exploits them. Layla had found what she perceived as my vulnerability. She never realized she'd created her own in the process. The greatest power lies not in strength, but in patience. Not in action, but in observation. Not in immediate confrontation, but in strategic response. I set down my glass and turned back toward the warmth of my home. Behind me, the lake darkened to the same midnight blue as Layla's favorite dress, the one she'd worn the night I heard her wish for my permanent unconsciousness. Somewhere across town, she was discovering what it truly meant to be invisible, forgotten, perceived as worthless. And I was standing, walking, living, architect of my own recovery and her carefully constructed downfall. Some nights, like tonight, that was enough. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.